generally we have a goal to release weight, right? And we're so fixated on that goal, we're so fixated on the outcome of the goal
Yeah.
that we don't think about what we're going to do to get there, and more importantly, what we are going to do to stay there once we get there. When we are focused on an outcome, we will do anything possible in order for us to achieve our goal. So it doesn't matter how I release those 20 pounds as long as I do. I want to start off by saying that, something that we talk a lot about in M1 is learning how to view things and giving certain things that happen in your life a story. And instead of looking at things that happen as things that happen to us, to instead look at them as things that happened for us. And so as I share with you my story, I'm also so grateful it happened, and want to say that for many, many years, I was very embarrassed. I didn't share it with a lot of people because I always felt like the victim of that story. So growing up, I was very athletic. That's really how I identified myself. I was a child athlete. I was very big into swimming. I was in all sports and constantly known for being the strongest girl in class or the fastest runner in the class. And when I was in high school, I was also very heavily into sports, and track and field being one of my main sports. I was hit by a car when I was 16 years old, and I damaged my spine, and as a result had back surgery for the first time. And my doctors told me that I couldn't participate in sports anymore, that going forward I would have to start maybe doing some light walking on the treadmill, and should I become pregnant in the future, then that could propose a lot of challenges because it wasn't really known how well my back would support the pregnancy at the time. So for many years I listened, and I had my back surgery. I started taking a lot of pain medication to manage the back pain. I was very limited with what I could do. I would always be very on guard of how I was sitting, how long I was sitting for, and that essentially became my life in, my late teens. And this went on for a few years, and of course I started finding myself hanging out with a completely different crowd. It wasn't the athletic crowd anymore, and started picking up habits in my life that didn't really match that identity that I knew as a child. Until my early 20s, I had enough. I just woke up one day and I just couldn't recognize myself. I didn't like where this was going. So I walked into the gym. I had no idea what I was doing at the time. And I just started imitating what I saw around me. I just started copying exercises, and I stuck with this for several months until eventually I noticed that my strength was increasing. My back pain was almost gone at that point. I was coming off of my pain medications. I bought a treadmill from off of Kijiji, or I guess you guys call it Craigslist there. And I slowly started running, so 5 minutes at a time, and slowly built up to an hour until eventually I was able to run a full hour outside. I was able to train, and I just unleashed this unbelievable passion and desire inside me to share this with others. Because if I could do this, then I could help others do this. And at that time, I was doing my master's degree in chemistry at McGill, and I decided, well, I don't want to do this anymore because I feel like this is not my path. My parents were flipping out. How could you just stop in the middle of your master's degree? But I knew that I had to do this. So I stopped my studies. I went back to Concordia. I started a brand new bachelor's degree in exercise science and learned everything I could possibly know about the body. And it just became an obsession, just to understand how the body could move, to understand how to manage pain, how to help others with pain, and of course, to understand nutrition and how that also, not just for aesthetic reasons, can help a person, but more importantly, to help somebody with performance or even managing chronic pain. And eventually I found myself just starting to work with people. I was training anybody who would allow me to. And, for free, I was driving all around town, going to people's homes. And that's really where it all started for me.
That's incredible. And it's amazing to see what you really had to change were the habits that filled up your daily life.
Yes.
Now, we all have habits. We don't always think of them in terms of health and fitness, but health and fitness habits are just as important as everything else. And that's what I heard you say is you started changing. You changed your environment, you changed the people you're around. So you formed new habits, one that was focused on health, fitness, and how to heal. So, do you see that a lot with your clients and patients where if they just change their daily habits, just switch it a little bit, they have a whole new life?
Yes, exactly. And your habits create your identity, right?
Mhm.
It's very difficult to desire a goal when the habits or the lifestyle that you live don't match that goal. And so many of us that are thinking about creating a transformation in our health and fitness, and New Year being one of the most popular times to do that, generally we have a goal to release weight, right? And we're so fixated on that goal, we're so fixated on the outcome of the goal
Yeah.
that we don't think about what we're going to do to get there. And more importantly, what we are going to do to stay there once we get there. When we are focused on an outcome, we will do anything possible in order for us to achieve our goal. So it doesn't matter how I release those 20 pounds as long as I do. And oftentimes we choose methods that are not safe because we're always looking for that quick fix. We live in a fast paced society. We want instant gratification. We don't want to put in a lot of effort, but we want those results right away. And so that may work out for the short term. We may end up releasing that weight, but we've never really built that lifestyle, those habits, and more importantly, that identity that will help us to become that person. So when I work with people, I help them reframe that goal. And instead of focusing so much on the outcome, the question then becomes, well, what do I have to do to become a person who is 20 pounds lighter? And now I can start looking at the different areas of my life. A person who's 20 pounds lighter probably eats differently than I do, probably moves around a little bit more, maybe is around a different social environment. And all of these things now become little habits or little goals that I can tackle and create in my life. So instead of thinking about this huge goal of just releasing those 20 pounds, I can now focus on, well, what can I do on a daily basis in order for me to get one step closer to that ultimate outcome?
Yeah, and that makes sense. And kind of also what I hear you say, it's the journey.
Yeah.
It's finding the happiness and the growth in that journey. Because if you're okay with that journey, you can continue to have journeys and stay focused on, okay, I want to be healthier. I want to lose weight, to be at a healthier weight. But it's a journey that I know how to control and know how to adapt to my lifestyle that allows me to achieve those goals. And big or small, it's really the journey that we have to develop and find out what works for us, our motivations, our lifestyle, our environment, like you said.
Right, right. And this journey is also very enjoyable. And I believe that we for the most part miss that point. Again, we're so focused on that outcome that we're not enjoying what we are really doing. And we're not celebrating every single win. You know, every time we show up for a workout that we've committed to, that's a win. Even
Yeah.
if the output was not as great as we desired.
Yeah.
If we scheduled a run and we didn't end up running as fast as we wanted to, that's still a win. And we have to honor that and we have to celebrate that and not focus on how slow we were going or that it wasn't our best run. And in general, that is where we're fixated. We're always fixated on the lack. We're
Mhm.
fixated on the scarcity, what we're not doing yet. And that takes away from that encouragement, that self motivation to continue to commit in the long term.
Yeah. And it's true. It's very important that we work on our mindset. I imagine when you're working with clients, you probably get people of all different backgrounds. Are there certain steps that you take them through to determine what little habits they can change? Do you look at, different aspects of health? Kind of what is your process?
Right. So every single person is very unique in their approach to how they want to start that journey. And we have a tendency to constantly compare ourselves with others. And the first thing we have to do is think about what is right for us, what is best for us. I personally don't believe that there is one diet that fits all. Yes, absolutely, we have that those core principles about focusing on whole foods, removing the inflammatory foods, which is where we all should start from, and obviously removing the processed foods. But understanding that our body works a certain way. And in my case, let's say with my back injury, I also have to show up to my workouts a certain way. I have to adapt my training a certain way. And so when we're in this place where we're constantly comparing ourselves with others, we're comparing ourselves with people who have maybe done it longer than we have, then it also becomes very discouraging.
Mm-hmm.
But it is all going to come down to why you want to do something. And that
Yeah.
truly is the strongest driving force. Why do you want to release weight? Why do you want to create fitness goals this year? Is it because other people are doing it? Is it because somebody made a comment? Or is it because you truly desire that change? And if you have a strong enough purpose and strong enough why, you're never going to need motivation. It's just going to be so powerful for you to stick to. And
Yeah.
my why, for example, I always come back to that day where my second back surgery in 2012, I went in on a Wednesday. I was in immense pain. I was putting together my gym, and after a lot of painting and sanding plyometric boxes, I injured my back really, really badly. I was rushed to the hospital by ambulance, and the doctor scheduled me for surgery 2 days later, telling me that I was 2 millimeters away from cauda equina.
Mm.
That for me is a moment I will never forget. And whenever I
Yeah.
look at a workout that I don't want to do, or every time I think about a run that I don't want to do or don't feel like doing, I remind myself that I don't have to do this. I
Yeah.
get to do this. I get to do this because I could have been in a completely different place right now, not able to ever enjoy this liberty of health that I have.
Yeah.
And health is absolutely a blessing. It is not a right, but everything about it is a blessing.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And for those who don't know cauda equina, so at the end of your spinal cord, the nerves kind of just come out. And so cauda equina is like the horse's tail. So your nerves come out and go through your body. So if that area gets pinched, it can lead to a whole slew of problems, loss of bowel and bladder, different types of paralysis. There could be a whole slew of things. So it's a very serious condition. And, Sherry had to take some quick action, and that's typically considered an emergency surgery to get that fixed. It's often seen in car accidents and such high impact injuries. But the thing that we take from this is you can recover, you can heal as long as you start taking those steps and you realize, what, your life is not stagnant. It's not going to stay that way. You can start to make changes, which, you're evidence of right now and all that you do. It's really fascinating.
Well, I appreciate that, but Amy, I truly believe we all have something. And for everyone it's different, whether that be a physical injury, whether that be a condition or a disease that we're living with, or even just that resistance to change or a struggle with weight loss. All of these are blocks that we have, and I truly believe that there is a way to get around that. But again, it comes to that honoring your body, understanding that the win is showing up.
Yeah.
It's not focusing on what we're not doing, but always focusing on what we are able to do. And understand that there is so much for us available if we just have some grace with ourselves and start one step at a time.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. The other thing also that helps is having that community,
Mm-hmm.
having someone to guide you along, someone like you. I know you work with a lot of clients and you guide them along their journey. We all need someone, that mentor, that coach, that guiding hand that helps us and says, what, you're on the right path. Let me just show you a little bit more, let me be a listening ear for you. And you provide that service for a lot of people.
Yeah, and Rock says this also, Rock Thomas, he says this often, is that a coach helps you see your blind spots.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think it's us. We think that we try things and it's just my body's just not changing. My body just, I just don't know, I just don't lose weight, or I just don't get strong, or I just can never do a push-up, or I just can't squat. And the truth is, if we are always repeating the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result, I think we call that insanity, right? But a coach helps you see what you're not seeing and
Yeah.
helps you come out of your comfort zone. A lot of us are looking online for free workouts and free meal plans, and there's lots of information available, and some of it is really great, but also we have to realize that anyone can write anything and anyone can publish anything. But the way that the human ego works is that we tend to choose workouts that are maybe not accurate for us or maybe not pulling us out of our comfort zone. But instead, we choose workouts that we know look easy, look fun, look doable. And that doesn't always give us the results that we want.
Yeah.
But a coach and that supportive community around you, like you're saying, Amy, does help guide you. They are pushing you out of your comfort zone. When I'm giving workout prescriptions to a client, most of the time they're complaining, oh, I don't want to do burpees. You put burpees for me. And I always point it out. I'm like, if it was up to you to create your own programming, you would never put in burpees.
Yeah.
But burpees are amazing because imagine when you're 80, how agile you're going to feel getting on the floor, standing up, getting on the floor. And there's a reason why every single exercise provides that value.
Yeah. Absolutely. And to go along with that, nutrition as well, right? You have a extensive background in nutrition, so I can imagine that also comes into the forefront when you're trying to get someone to improve their health, not only movement, but what you put in your body.
Right.
So I'd like to dive into that a little bit. I know that you have often spoken on metabolism, ways to boost your metabolism. I'm hoping you can share a little bit about that and just some of the tips that you give to people.
Yeah, for sure. Great question. So, metabolism in general is how efficiently we can convert energy. And I truly believe that it starts with gut health. But some signs of knowing that you have a sluggish metabolism is always feeling tired, feeling lethargic, feeling that you never fully rest. You don't recover after long hours of sleep. You are slower in your workouts. You're always feeling sore. You possibly have headaches. And then, of course, digestive issues. So, bloating, constipation, irregular bowel movements. All of these are signs that you have a sluggish metabolism. And the way we see it oftentimes too is resistance to weight loss. No matter how much I do, no matter what I'm doing, I can never seem to lose weight. And there's a lot of different reasons why that happens, but most of them are tied with gut health. And we have trillions of bacteria in our gut that are responsible for our digestion. They're responsible for activating hormones. They're responsible for activating vitamins as well. And it's an endocrine system. They're also responsible for our regulation of hormones in our body. So if I'm eating the wrong foods that don't feed the good guys, that don't feed the good bacteria, I can never benefit 100% from my gut health. And in fact, we consider this a damaged gut and possibly leaky gut. So if I have a diet that is high in processed food, that is high in sugars, that is high in gluten and dairy, then I can expect that my gut is not operating at its most efficient capability.
Right.
So the first step is to address that. And the way that we address that is that no, we don't just take probiotics to fix our gut, because if we just do that without changing our diet, then we're planting seeds, but we never get to feed those seeds. We never get to water them and nourish them to grow. So they have to kind of come in hand. So we have to focus on eating more whole foods, more plants, and less processed foods, less sugars, and then adding in possibly probiotics, but also fermented food in order for us to restore that gut microbiome.
Yeah.
And then after that, we could increase our water intake. We can, of course, start to exercise, start to move, and
Mhm.
all of these things will help us improve our metabolism.
Yeah, those are some great tips. I'm curious with what you think about this. So lately, I've switched to having my biggest meal of the day at lunchtime.
Mhm.
So instead of having a big dinner, having it at lunchtime, and then going for a walk in the evening after I'm done with working with clients all day. I go for a walk, then I make dinner, and I have a very small meal. And I noticed big shifts in my weight. It dropped like very quickly, 10 pounds, just like that. And it was because, I wasn't eating this huge meal and then going to bed. I ate in the middle of daytime till I was full, even stopped before I was full, just let it satiate, let my digestive tract take over. And then by the time dinner came out, I wasn't that hungry, and I'd nibble a little bit just to, just quell some of the hunger, but it wasn't a big deal. And I feel so much better. Instead of having a small lunch and then I'm drained mid afternoon, I had a nice lunch and I had energy the rest of the day. It was quite a shift. Of course, it happened during the pandemic because I could prepare a nicer lunch during the daytime. So I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I do agree with you 100%, Amy. And the majority of our calories should be had during the day where we are the most active, where we do need that energy. And like you're saying, maybe pre-pandemic, most of us are so busy in our day, we're not prepared. We don't have food available or prepared for us, so we can go the whole day with just a couple snacks. And then by the time evening rolls around, we have dinner. And then because we didn't eat enough during the day, we just keep snacking and munching and munching and munching. And once you have that deficit in the day, then it's really hard later to get that satiety. You're still
Yeah.
looking for that food. You're still now you're starting to crave sweet stuff. You're starting to crave sugar because that's instant energy for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of those are very detrimental to healing and restoring our body. So not good. Now, before we went live, we were talking about a book called Fiber Fueled. And I heard Dr. Will Bulchowicz on a podcast recently. And one of the biggest takeaways I took was having 30 different plants in your daily or weekly meal plan. So it could be herbs, spices, vegetables, grains, fruits. And I find that very fascinating. When I tell people that, their first reaction is, there is no way I can do that. It's not as hard as you'd think, though, right?
No, and it's not, and there's little tricks around it, but that's a really great point, and he talks a lot about creating variety and biodiversity. So again, coming back to the gut microbiome, if we have so many different strains, we have a variety of strains, it allows us to eat a lot more food and be able to digest and break down a lot more food comfortably. But when we're limiting our intake to about 10 different fruits and vegetables and just within that range, which is really the average diet for most of us, and that's probably even being a little bit generous,
Yeah.
then we're only growing a very, very small population of bacteria. And again, coming back to the importance of the gut microbiome in terms of hormone regulation and the immune system as well, and our mood, and so many new discoveries that are happening every single week. It's so important to create diversity in our food and that way allow our microbiome to be more complete and give us optimal health.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious, when you encourage people to drink more water, do you have them put lemon in it or anything else in it, or do you just say straight pure water?
My dentist will kill me because every time I would come in to the gym with lemon in my water, she's
Yeah.
like, that's so bad for your enamel. And she's right, from that
Mm-hmm.
perspective. Yes, I do put lemon in the water. I do encourage to put something in there to help make it a little bit tastier. I mean, it
Yeah.
gets really boring to drink straight up water, but it's really important also that whatever we put in there won't be artificial sweeteners, won't be chemicals. There's a lot of powders and mixes that are 0 calorie that we can put in there, but it's always a reminder that we don't know the impact of these chemicals long term, and we don't know the impact of these chemicals on our gut microbiome. And tea is also an option. There's a lot of herbal teas, and it's another way to get our fluids. Eating a lot of fresh vegetables is another way to get our fluids as well. So just
Mhm.
knowing that the more vegetables I eat, the more plants I eat, they're also full of water, and I'm getting more hydration this way.
Yeah, very important point. And we need that, especially if we're going to start working out. Now, in terms of metabolism, do you encourage a certain amount of time exercising or moving per day when you advise people?
Oh, that's really great. So, yeah, always meeting the person where they're at. So, for
Mhm.
example, if a person is accustomed right now to, say, 2,000 steps a day, we're not going to jump to 10,000 right off the bat. But that being our ultimate goal as a minimum, then slowly making our way towards that. And in terms of exercise, I really, really promote the high intensity interval training and strength and conditioning. So, a lot of strength work, a lot of loading of the bones as well, especially as women age. It's really important for our bone density and to avoid things like osteoporosis and
Yeah.
osteopenia. But what we always focus on in general is what we're going to do at the gym. If we set up a workout, we're always focused on, just that workout, and we kind of neglect all of the other hours of the day. But the true secret for boosting the metabolism is thinking about all of the other hours of the day where we're not moving so much.
Yeah.
You may hit an amazing workout at the gym and you got to spend an entire hour lifting weight, but then the rest of the day was quite sedentary. So that's a reminder that we are meant to move, and there are different ways of doing that. Here in Montreal, we have an 8 p.m. curfew, and it's quite cold on some days, so for sure, it kind of restricts people from leaving the house. But
Mhm.
some things that we can do at home is, going up and down the stairs a few rounds while we put away our laundry. Every opportunity that we get to, grab something and put something away, we should do that. I think
Yeah.
a lot of us default to asking our kids to grab us a pen or to grab us a water. Can you get me that from the closet? Go upstairs and grab me this. But the way I look at it is those are lost opportunities to burn energy. So I
Yeah.
try as much as possible. I don't mind if I forgot something downstairs, I'll run downstairs, I'll come back upstairs and
Mhm.
try to increase those steps all
Yeah.
day long.
Yeah. That's funny that you say that because I'll get the feedback from people when I say cook using just food from the ground, vegetables, plants, and they say when you eat plant-based, it takes so much time cooking. And I come back with, I'm standing, I'm walking around, I'm moving during that time. So by the time I actually sit down and eat, I've actually earned my meal because I've burned some calories, used some muscles. And it used to be something, a bit of a resistance because it took time. And now it's a way to decompress, but I'm still moving my body and creating something, with a lot of colors and eventually, hopefully, it tastes good.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when when you're working with people and you're encouraging them to move and you're working on an exercise prescription or strengthening prescription, do you have a certain protocol or what do you look for when bumping someone up? What is your recommendations for someone who wants to get started, isn't really sure, maybe they've been sedentary for a while, hanging out on the couch with COVID? What is some of the things that you think about?
Yeah, great question. So, first of all, never underestimate the duration of your workout. I think some of us have this concept where we believe that it should be a minimum of an hour or 30 minutes or longer in order for us to see results. And the truth is, if we have intensity inside our workout, and intensity is relative to the person, by the way, then that already in itself will create the changes that we want to see in terms of lean body mass, in terms of cardiovascular output. But before we even look at intensity, we're going to rewind a little bit and, from a beginner's perspective, think about functional movements. So, my first go to is functional movement. And A functional movement is a movement that we do in our day-to-day life. It is a natural movement. So, for example, coming back to the burpee we talked about, maybe lying down on the floor and standing up. Squatting is a functional movement. And there are many civilizations and peoples that are still squatting to wash their laundry or do their cooking. You could also watch a child play and they're in that squat position most of the time. So
Mhm.
we start there. We learn first form and then we add intensity. So I hardly prescribe movements that only focus on one muscle group, such as a bicep curl. I do believe it has its place, but I would prefer to start off first with movements that recruit as many muscle groups as possible because that's also how the body works anatomically. The body does not work in isolation. It works simultaneously. All of the muscles, antagonists, protagonists, they have to work together in order to create stability. So we start there, and once the form is clean and we're doing full range of motion,
Mhm.
assuming that a person does not have an injury that limits them to do so, then we will add intensity. And intensity at that point just means speed. But I will never sacrifice form for intensity. I'll try to move faster, meaning I'll take less rest, but I won't then change my form so that I set myself up for injury.
Yeah. Very important. And I'm glad to hear you say that. I know you work with people one on one, right? When you're working with them. So by the time they leave, they know exactly what to do. Because I have to say, I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube where people are instructed on how to do an exercise and form isn't always stressed. And
Yeah.
that's so critical to help your nervous system to communicate to your muscles to perform the action that you want. And so a lot of times I'll see, men or women where they have really small thighs and they say, I've been doing squats, I do squats all the time, but they've been using their back to do the squats. They don't actually sense and feel their thighs. And one of the most critical points of any type of movement is, do you feel the muscles working in the way they're intended to work to create that movement? And sometimes people don't know what that feels like. And so you have to take a step back and say, okay, how can we make this easier to isolate that muscle so they can actually feel it to be able to incorporate in a functional movement?
Right.
And I imagine you go through that with your clients to help them basically become their own trainer in the sense that they know and what they're supposed to feel.
Yes, and it's always just a few small cues. For example, for the squat, just to simply push your knees out. By pushing your knees out, you're activating your glutes, and like you said, Amy, it's not all back at that point. And one of the questions I always get asked is, how come you don't have mirrors in your gym?
Yeah.
In some gyms it works, but for me, I really love that proprioceptive feedback and having a person learn where they are in space. If I'm always relying on a mirror, well, first of all, while I'm squatting, my head is turned this way, so I'm not even aligned. And I may be straining some different areas of my body, but I never get to really feel what something feels like properly. I
Yeah.
don't get that message to the joint or to the muscle and then sent back to the brain for feedback.
Yeah.
So it is just a few cues, but you're right. We have to make sure that we are firing certain muscle groups when we're doing certain exercises. And I actually find it's much easier to start with a beginner than a person who is already a little bit experienced but then has to change their form. It's harder to correct something that we've already programmed inside our mind for so long, to undo that
Yeah.
than to just start from the beginning and learn new things. And it's really incredible for any person to start, even a person who's never worked out a day in their life, to start and see amazing results in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. And we've covered several different topics now. So let's say I'm a beginner and I just heard our talk here. We talked about a lot. Now, how do I not get overwhelmed? That's a big problem when people are deciding, okay, time to focus on health this year. How do I not get overwhelmed by all the input that we hear from people?
Yeah, really great question. You know, I'll always ask someone to imagine that they're talking to a small child.
Mhm.
You know, if you are a parent or you're speaking to a small child, how would you encourage them to do anything?
Yeah.
If they've never done a push up before, would you expect them from the first try to do 10 push ups in a row perfectly with perfect form and execution? No, of course not. But for some reason, when it comes to us, we are so hard on ourselves. We are our worst critics. We're constantly looking at that lack, focusing on what we're not doing right yet, and comparing ourselves with others. So my advice is to just start where you're at and talk to that inner child. What is the one thing that you have to do to get a little bit closer to your goals? Don't even think about that outcome just yet, but what's that first thing? And that first thing is just to show up. And if every single time you show up, you honor your body where you're at, you're going to have so much more fun in the process.
Yeah.
But if every single time you show up, you're beating yourself up because it's not perfect enough, it doesn't look right, you're still waiting for those fast results, then this is going to be a miserable journey. And for the most part, so many people quit so soon because the demands on themselves are so high.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the journey again. It's the journey. It's the little shifts, the little changes that really help you go that much further. So now you have a gym, right? And you work with people in your gym.
Yes.
Okay. And so you work with them. What are all the different options that people come to see you for?
Well, from private coaching
Okay.
to group coaching, and I just want to add that in Montreal, gyms are still closed, by the way, so I'm doing a lot of stuff
Mhm.
online.
Okay.
But I also do work with athletes in nutrition as well as osteopathy, so treatment.
Wonderful. And so all of this can be done virtually through a platform like Zoom, right?
Yeah, so Zoom, and then for the treatment for
Mhm.
osteopathy, that is in person right now.
Okay, that's absolutely wonderful. How can people learn more about you? Where can they visit you or reach you?
So my website, sherryshaban.com, there's a list of all the services and the things that I offer in terms of coaching programs.
Yeah,
And then to get in touch with me directly, either on Instagram or Facebook at Sherry Shaban Fitness.
that's absolutely wonderful. And any last minute tip you'd like to give our audience?
Yes, I would like to share athletes, and I call you an athlete because it's all about identity and mindset.
Mhm.
I want to share with you that it's never too late. That no matter where you are right now in your journey, no matter how many times you've tried stuff, and no matter how many times things may not have worked out the way you wanted them to, it's never too late. There's always a way. So don't give up. Keep searching and know that everything that you will journey into has to be adapted to you. You have to find the joy in this, and you have to find something that is sustainable for you. Avoid starting things that you know you don't enjoy and will never keep up for the long term. Start with one small thing at a time, and every single week, build up on that. Don't try to do everything at one time. And just know that with patience and with time, everything is going to fall in place. No matter where you are, no matter what your age is, no matter what your injuries are, you absolutely can create transformation.